I'm discussing the challenges people who are seriously ill face when dealing with herbs. The reason a lot of the times wild vegetation called herbs get a bad reputation because the first and most important reason why there can be a challenge is because the patient does not take enough of the herb. A lot of the herbs that I particularly work with, the wild vegetation that I work with, is sold on the main market. However, the amount offered in a 60 tablet or a 60 capsule bottle is just simply not enough of what needs to be taken by a person who is dying. A person who is dying but still able to feed and drink for themselves cannot benefit off of a bottle of 60 capsules of a particular herb, because this is not enough. When a person is dying of serious cancer, heaping teaspoons of a particular herb needs to be taken with their meals. These heaping teaspoons will bombard their bloodstream. It's almost an exaggerated amount of what that individual needs because their body is so depleted of nutrients from the cancer and oftentimes from the damaging effects of that poisonous chemotherapy. I did the math on an example of a bottle of herbs. Say a particular herb on its own offered in a bottle of 60 capsules, and in each capsule there is 750 milligrams each. Upon doing the math, that bottle should only last that person 2 days. And the bottle costs anywhere from $14 to $50 usually, depending on the company or where it's being exported from. Um, Bottles of herbs are pricey; they're not cheap things. But using your own guidance, and also a little fear is involved. But taking a bottle of herbs on the market is just not enough. Heaping teaspoons are needed to be taken with food and drink on a daily basis, about 4 grams to 3 grams each time. So in the morning, 4 grams, which is about 2.5 teaspoons of herbs with water before your meal. Then in the afternoon, when you're having a snack, another 2 teaspoons or 3 teaspoons should be taken. With lunch, another 3 or 4 teaspoons to be taken. With dinner or supper, another 3 or 4 teaspoons to be taken. And to rest during the night and to do it all over again in the morning. Results will be seen within 2 days, or I would say count 3 bowel movements. From the time you take the herb, after 3 bowel movements, your strength and mentality should improve when taking herbs. The proper herbs at the proper amount, at the proper frequency. Oftentimes, folks take herbs one day in the morning and feel they don't have to take it any longer, or it's so inconvenient, the taste of it, it's a little scary or just too expensive. So those are some of the challenges folks face when dealing with herbs. So the first and most important reason I would say is the frequency of the intake of herbs. Herbs are wild vegetation. They are made from God. They're not made in a lab, grown in a garden. They're not grown using any assistance from a human. The reason why they grow is because they have their own intelligence from the heavens or from wherever. Evolution The seed, the very seed of the herb itself, has its own intelligence to know when to grow, where to grow. Not all herbs can be grown in your everyday garden or greenhouse. They are extremely picky and wild. When it comes to wild vegetation can be compared to the vegetation in supermarkets, for example. Just like a house cat is compared to a wild cat, a jaguar, a lion, or tiger, wild things are usually stronger, more intelligent, more healthy, more whole, more put together, more savvy about where and what where they grow, how they grow, when they decide to bloom, etc. They are using the intelligence from evolution, or if you will, or the heavens. So herbs are the proper herbs when dealing with a person who is dying or getting sick rapidly, losing weight, feeling dizzy. Also, a person who has taken chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is extremely synthetic and human orchestrated, and that is why it makes a person feel so bad. It causes lots of dizziness, fatigue, tiredness, nausea, and many of the herbs that I work with remedy the effects of poisonous chemotherapy. They strengthen the brain, strengthen the bloodstream, strengthen the muscles in the body, holistically strengthen the entire body, including the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the excretory system. The excretory system is where the cancer will leave. It'll leave through mucus out of the nose and bowel movements, as well as urination. Slowly but surely, this cancer will come out of the body with proper usage of herbs. The frequency is what is the foremost challenge when it comes to herbs. The frequency to take the herbs is not often offered because of the price. That's the second reason. It's tied a little into the first reason, but the pricing, the average person, well, okay. So I did the math on an example of an herb that I discussed on my channel, offered on the mainstream market in health food stores, etc. And for example, this bottle of capsules of Plantago, which is called plantain, for example, a bottle of 60 of them, and each tablet being 750 milligrams, will last or should last a person 2 days with the amount of herb and frequency that it needs to be taken. It would only serve a person for a day and a half or 2 days, and that is because the body needs to be constantly bombarded with the herb for it to work. Bombarded in the bloodstream, constantly taken with how as often as a person drinks water or snacks during the day, the herb needs to be taken that often, and it's not quite offered because a bottle of plantain herb, for example, call it $15. That's $15 every 2 days, and that's not even counting the other herbs that will really speed up the healing process because it offers different types of nutrients than Plantago. So that's just one example. It's just not enough. And when you do try to get enough, it can be expensive and tiring. The third challenge, or part of the second challenge, is that the price of the herbs is a lot because of the packaging. These are herbs that can be found in the wild, and it takes 2 minutes or a little trip, a little walk. And also, it takes some time to wash them, dry them, separate other weeds that may have been picked up in the foraging process. It does take a little time and work, but not enough for it to be costing the way it costs with packaged herbs from the mainstream market. When dealing with wild vegetation offered from the mainstream, what a person is paying for is the packaging. The packaging is gorgeous. They use beautiful artwork and computerized labeling, beautiful blue bottles, green bottles, specialized, beautiful packaging, and that is what a person is primarily paying for when purchasing herbs on the main market. These herbs, they are the herb. They have been, cleaned and processed through particular companies. However, the amount offered is just not enough. The intention of those particular herbs sold are for a healthy person to supplement their diet to prevent allergies or just to strengthen themselves after a workout. But for a person who is dying or on chemotherapy, will to need more amounts of the herb, and in combination with other wild vegetation, to clear out fast and strengthen the body quickly in a matter of 2 days or three bowel movements worth. Not diarrhea either. Many of the herbs that I work with are taken in powder form, they're not extracts at all. I believe that the body should process the herb holistically, to not to have anything taken away from it, but to process the herb, let the body process the herb. And because the has so much nutrition, it's a wild vegetable. A synonym for herb, and a way that a person should think about herbs, and the way that I tell folks about herbs all the time, is that it is simply a type of wild vegetable, wild vegetation, meaning it does not require the assistance of a human to grow. Did not require any pesticides, uh, fertilizers, specialized lighting, any protections to grow. These are grown in the wild, where they are subject to bugs, rain, wind, and yet they grow because the very seed of these herbs have their own intelligence. The very seed that looks like an inanimate object is actually a living creature that can detect the temperature, the chemistry of the soil, the moisture available, and it is an entity, like a little egg or creature, a small creature with its own intelligence that can determine when it's time to grow. It doesn't require any fertilizers or stimulants provided by humans like farmed vegetables, which are grown normally on farms or greenhouses with the assistance of human technology, specialized 24-hour lighting, pesticides, fertilizers, chemically treated soil, etc. These herbs or wild vegetation are stronger. It's as if you're comparing a house cat or a little toy dog breed to a coyote or wolf. The wild vegetation is packed with nutrients that the body needs. And going back to our very most important reason to or a challenge faced when using herbs is that it needs to be taken often with meals and drink for a person who is very sick and dying. I hate to use that word, but um, if a person is still eating and drinking on their own, there's plenty of hope for their body to reverse with the use of herbs and get stronger, to kill parasites, repair damage caused by chemotherapy, and to rid and shrink and rid the body of the cancerous cells. It can be done so long as the patient is still eating and drinking on their own. This is controversial information and not very much spread, because the pharmaceutical industry would take a huge plummet if regular folks knew that herbs growing nearby can save them. The wild vegetation has special nutrients within them because the seed knows which particular soil to grow. These herbs have an intelligence and ability to suck up minerals from particular soils and digest them in a form that the plant uses that is able to marry, because it's a living thing, it's able to marry into our own bloodstream and nourish our own organs. So, in the case of stroke, which is the brain, dealing with the brain and the neurological circuits of the body, or the heart, or the kidneys, or the liver, the pancreas, the eyesight, etc., the certain minerals offered in certain wild vegetation are very nutritious to the body in a way that is so extreme, it's called medicinal or therapeutic. Medicinal, really, because it has the ability to patch up what has been damaged from years of drinking, smoking, or even the recent addition of chemotherapy into a person's life, which is harmful. Chemotherapy, most 99% of chemotherapy treatments cause dizziness, fatigue, nausea, weakness because it is synthetic poison formulated by the pharmaceutical industry. Herbs remedy the damaging effects that chemotherapy itself has caused. Some of the herbs strengthen the heart, strengthen the brain, and they supply special nutrients at a concentrated level that repairs damage overnight or in a matter of days. But that is only if it is taken if the bloodstream is being bombarded with it morning to evening, the next day, just like that, morning to evening, 4, 5, 6 times a day, as often as the person drinks a glass of water or has a snack or a meal. These herbs should be taken powdered form in teaspoons. What's offered in the tablets is simply just not enough. What you're paying. Three things: it's not enough. You're paying for the packaging, and it's quite inconvenient because they are usually in a little gelatin capsule, so it'll take a while for it to break down within the body. Whereas taking a teaspoon of the powdered herb itself marries into the bloodstream like food will. But because it's not quite food, it's wild vegetation with extreme concentrated amounts of certain minerals organically that the body needs. That is where it can be called medicinal. Here is an example of an herb called greater celandine in powder form, and in a tablet offered, yeah, that's better. In a tablet offered, this is about 1 gram that I powdered or crushed, and it's about 1.2 grams here, for example. And this amount, about 9 times of it each day, should be taken in teaspoons. And if one does the math on an average bottle of tablet, average bottle offered by health food stores or different companies, is simply not enough. That bottle would last a person 2 days or a day and a half, which is quite wasteful because really what you're paying for is the packaging. So that's something that really has to be explained to people, because we may have heard stories of people who try to use herbs to treat themselves unsuccessfully, and that is two reasons: either enough wasn't taken and bombarding the bloodstream, because when a person is so ill on that level, and especially taking chemotherapy, their body needs extra amounts of nutrients and rest. And once a day or twice a day or once in a tea or having a cup of tea where you're not actually swallowing the material of the herb but straining it is just being too stingy. One has to bombard the bloodstream with the wild vegetation as if it were food with your food, and the body will process it and it will work its own proper intelligence that it has received through evolution or the heavens or however you want to describe it, but it has its own intelligence that has not been tampered with by humans. They develop seed, they grow where they want and at the proper time without any assistance from a farm, a greenhouse, chemicalized soils, or special protections. They are in the wild and they are strong. The very fact that they grow in the wild tells us that they are, and without human assistance, tells us that they are receiving all the proper minerals that that particular plant needs to live. And because it has grown and is thriving in the wild without any human assistance, tells us as humans that this is a healthy thing to eat. But specifically with the proper guidance is what a individual needs to know which combination of herbs, like 3 or 4 different herbs to treat the body holistically and to target the particular organs that are damaged. Usually kidneys in the case of cancer. Kidney is and heart are oftentimes the 2 organs that are most damaged, but cancer can exist in the brain, the lungs, and the lymphatic system. So those are about 2 reasons I mentioned, which was the price, the frequency, and the amount of herbs taken. 2 lesser reasons that really has to do with personality and mentality is that a lot of times people who work with herbs have, what I found in my research just looking around, that oftentimes a person who works with herbs has an arrogance issue. They are oftentimes greedy or impatient with folks, and working with herbs requires you, if in all reality, it requires a person to be a teacher. This is not mainstream information. It's not mainstream information because the pharmaceutical industry is multi-billion-dollar industry that thrives off of the ignorance of people. So it's rare that individuals work with herbs, and when they do, oftentimes they are self-driven, self-educated. You have to be, because this is not mainstream information. So one has to have a specialized curiosity to learn about wild vegetation and what it does, and the bravery. So with those character traits, sometimes arrogance and being mean or impatient is a character trait of herbalists. They blame the ill person for their sickness. They they're very demanding of these extreme changes to a person's life, like fasting, or they recommend books for the person to read. A person who is ill, they may not want to read. They are trusting in you as an expert or a person who is educated on the topic to educate them without them having to go to the library and do the footwork and the research, because the research is time consuming and it uses a lot of language that is not used in mainstream. It's a profession or a type of work to get into that is very self driven and took some time, patience, and courage to get into. So this the personality of certain herbalists is off-putting to a person who's terminally ill because they can be mean, they can be arrogant. I'm so self-taught and I know this knowledge and you don't. It's at the library. How come you don't know this? And even the functioning of different parts of the body, the average person sometimes doesn't have the education, no, doesn't have the education, or they may have had it at one point in their life, but they're busy with children, with work, and the person who is working with wild vegetation can be mean, a mean spirited individual, and that can be a turn off as well because then the patient or the ill person associates wild vegetation with mean people, and that's horrible that the innocent pure flowers get associated with nasty personalities. A fourth reason is the look of herbs. When working with professional medical doctors who work in hospitals and with the pharmaceutical industry, medicines are usually a clear liquid, a white tablet, or a small yellow or blue tablet, very machine industrialized, small packed together little synthetic tablet. And the herbs are not that. The herbs will always be a combination of shades of brown and green, greenish brown, brownish green, green, yellow green, olive green, grayish green, bright green, dark green, different shades of green or brown, whether you're making the tea or consuming the powder. For example, this is Chelidonium mahus, which is called greater celandine, which is a powerful herb that clears the blood, it fixes the bloodstream. Well, it does many things, but I won't get into that now. My point in discussing this is that it's brown and it's like an olive green. And if the tea was ever made of it, the tea would be like a bright golden brown. And that's because of the specific compounds in this specific herb, but other herbs are different shades of green and brown, whether you're dealing with mugwort, plantago, celandine, raspberry, all of them are always green or brown, and that can be a turn off to certain people who are used to seeing these, you know, little small white tablets and think that that's the answer. That's not the case with herbs. Herbs will always be green, brown, and lastly, it'll take some maturity to get over the taste. Luckily, in my particular work, I powder the herbs and recommend they be drank with warm water fast. Get it, whatever you got to do to get it in your tummy, in your stomach, get it in there. Don't waste time trying to taste it or be a connoisseur and bask in the flavor. Not about that. The magic of the herb does not work on the tongue and in being enjoyed as even though it's consumed in the amount like food, it is not to be enjoyed as food, meaning it's not quite for pleasure, it's for medicine. And whatever a person who is dying has to do to get it inside of their stomach while they're still able to eat and drink on their own, that is what needs to be done. Get it, drink, take the spoonful of it. Here's a regular teaspoon, and I'll just put some in here. A little bit spilled over, but my point is just, for example, I'm gonna take this. A person who is dying with cancer or receiving chemotherapy would need to take about 8 or 9 of these in combination. Well, the spoon will be more filled up in combination with other herbs, depending on where they have cancer, where they if they've had a stroke. I also treat stroke, Alzheimer's. But when it comes to cancer, this is a definite herb that is used called greater celandine. And I'm going to demonstrate quickly how one can take powdered herbs. I mentioned before about the capsules, and capsules just simply are not ideal for a person who is very very sick with cancer. It's an obstacle. The fact that they packed the herb, whether it's a capsule or a tablet, the tablet is usually encased in a gelatin or vegetable casing, and that is quite the obstacle for it to touch your flesh on the inside. This substance needs to be inside of your flesh for it to work. It needs to be inside of your flesh morning, noon, and night, and at the proper amounts for it to really get into the bloodstream and marry into the bloodstream. It needs to become a part of you, like how water is a part of us. We touch our skin, we have water in our eyes and our mouth and our nose, deep in our nose. This needs to marry with you in order for it to communicate with the bloodstream and work its magic. Work it's the same intelligence that the seed has when it's time to grow, and they don't grow everywhere. We cannot take wild vegetation and plant them anywhere we want and they'll grow. The seed itself seeks out the specific soil chemistry that it wants, and that's where it grows. So that same intelligence that it has, unassisted by humans, no human is involved with the seed's intelligence of where to grow. When it grows into a plant and we take it, wash it, dry it, powder it, that same intelligence will marry into our own flesh and work its magic by excreting any molds, poisons. It'll help the kidney excrete poisons, kill any parasites that have taken hold of the body, which a lot of cancers are caused by parasites. It'll heal any injuries, microscopic, hormonal imbalances, etc., depending on the herb combination. But I'll just and what I was saying is that the tablets and capsules create an obstacle because the tablets are the herb packed together by a machine so tightly. It'll take some time for the body to break it up, and yeah, it's an obstacle. We don't want any obstacle when it comes to marrying the herb with the bloodstream. So anything that will cause it to take longer to break apart in the stomach, like the gel casing or the fact that it's tightly packed together, is I consider that to be an obstacle. We want the pure herb powdered and taken with I say warm water, but room temperature water is fine. But please, never ice water. So if you're a person who likes to drink ice water, please try to drink it with room temperature or warm water. Not hot. It doesn't have to be hot, because the more water one drinks with this, the better. And hot water is another obstacle because of the temperature. It's not able to be gulped. But we want gulps of water to be combined with herb in the digestive system for it to work its magic and be inside the bloodstream. So we'll take about 9 heaping teaspoons a day. 3 in the morning, with a snack, another 3 later on, and the final 2 or 3 in the evening before bed. Next morning, same thing. It's all about bombarding the bloodstream with the substance so that the bloodstream recognizes it, uses it, and it works. It's in that same intelligence that the very seed had, is the intelligence of the grown plant. And it has the nutrients that it has, and minerals and nutrition that it has sucked up from the soil, and it will marry into your bloodstream and work its magic and repair a damaged body, damaged by way of cancers, which are molds or microscopic injuries, microscopic microbial infection, etc. Just damaged body, a damaged body by way of chemicals from tobacco smoke, alcohol, food coloring, and nuclear waste, etc. Anything synthetic that damages the body, these have so much nutrition and minerals within them that they will patch up and repair and help the body to excrete poisons, microscopic creatures, internal scar tissue, mucus, etc., that causes sickness and disease. What I will demonstrate now is just this is an amount that helps a healthy person. It'll help their immune system, but when it comes to a person who is dying, they need a lot more than this. But this, I'm just demonstrating how you can take the powder. One moment while I go get some bottle of water. But we are not here for the taste. When it comes to treating a ill person, we're not here for the taste. You don't want to chew it up, and if the more you can ignore the taste of it and just have it become just second nature, routine, is the better. Because the more we think a person who is ill thinks about, oh, I gotta take my medicine now, I don't like the taste, try not to taste it. Try to just get it down there. Whatever you got to do to get it in your belly, get it in there. Don't think about it. Don't bask in the flavor. Don't think about the upcoming teaspoons that you'll have to take, that you should want to take, look forward to take, but try not to dread. Put your mind on dreading taking it. Think of it as your intake of a special wild vegetable. Not your everyday grown vegetables that are assisted by humans with the pesticides and fertilizers and fences and greenhouses or 24-hour lighting, etc. These are wild herbs that grow without any human assistance. They grow on their own, they have their own intelligence, they're very independent, they're strong. The very seed itself, a little tiny little thing, knows which soil they'd like to grow in, because not all soils have the same chemistry. That could be another challenge with taking the powder, that you want to drink the water with, get it somehow in your stomach the easiest way you see fit to. Drink the water, wash it away, wash all the particles, and swallow it down. Get it inside of your stomach. Get it in. Herbs are never taken like chemotherapy by intravenous. Some chemotherapy drugs are taken intravenously, and I've done reading, and some of them are so damaging that if a nurse or doctor misses, that chemical burns and destroys the flesh surrounding the vein. So imagine what it does when it's in the vein. It's just weird. It's a very human manipulation, not to mention the side effects of how it makes people feel. Oh man. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video where I discussed challenges of taking herbs. I'll go over them one more time. So, um, the taste of the herbs, try not to taste it. Try to just get it in your stomach by any way you can. Just swallow it down with water. Don't bask in the event. Just treat it like routine. Get it over with. It's something that is so beneficial to you, but taste nasty. They're bitter. They have a bitterness about them. Some people might enjoy the taste. I don't know, but most folks wouldn't because they're bitter. But they're so beneficial to you, so healing, so good that just get it in your stomach by any way possible. There's no way to take this through vein or if you take it through tablet or capsule, that is an obstacle. That why create an obstacle when time is of the essence when it comes to cancer or illness that is rapidly taking your life energy away. So the taste is one. The look of them. Sorry, they're not white or yellow or clear. They're brown and green, just like the soil and the leaves. So, a third reason is the person who works with wild vegetation and studies them may have an arrogant, mean, impatient, um, or greedy type of demeanor, usually arrogant or mean. And that's not good because then we associate herbs with that type of personality because that type of personality is too frequent in this field of work. Fourth reason that can be a challenge is the packaging and the price. The packaging is just not enough of it offered, and the price is can add up because of the packaging. Not quite the processing of the herb because these herbs are minimally processed. They're not synthetically made or processed in a lab. They're simply just wild vegetation grown, wild vegetation picked without any human assistance. We find it in the wild where it grows in its natural habitat. And the very fact that it grew there and exists means that it has those particular minerals within it. It hasn't been treated or given the nutrients. The seed itself again has sought out in its travels in the wind and the rain has said, wow, I can live here because this soil is perfect for me. It has the proper nutrients. I can smell the minerals underneath the soil where I'd like to have put my roots. So the attractive packaging of the bottles of tablets and the very fact that the tablets and capsules can offer an obstacle, that's a challenge. And the pricing of, some people can afford to buy 20 bottles of an herb, but the supply may be limited and they might put a cap on how many you can buy when time is of the essence. You need it now. And um, the frequency is a fifth reason. A fifth challenge is that people don't know how often they should take these herbs. They're afraid of the herb, and fear is warranted because it's not a mainstream. The fear is warranted because it's not a mainstream subject matter that is. It's not mainstream. It's usually rogue individuals who are self-taught, self-researched, and courageous enough to blow the whistle on these wonderful wild vegetables. So my email address is in the description of this video. You may leave a comment and we'll see what we can do about your illness. The herbs are amazing. They work. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't want folks to know that. And they work on a person who is still able to eat on their own, drink on their own, and still having bowel movements. When you're eating and drinking on your own, there is plenty of hope for you. That means your body is well enough to take herbs and for the herbs to actually work upon you. It is when a person has gotten so sick that they are no longer able to feed themselves is when it's too late when it comes to herbs. So time is of the essence when dealing with these herbs. And I have other information regarding time and minerals, and I'll give two hints to the subject of time and minerals, quartz is a entity of the mineral kingdom, and it is used in clocks for a reason. Um, Also, in certain funny mythologies, usually certain mythologies speak about small people who work with or live deep in the forest, like leprechauns or the dwarves from Snow White. They live deep in the forest and they deal with diamonds, rubies, precious gold, jewels. And the mythology is such that a regular human goes into their world, time, and they come and they're in that world, and the mythology is that when they come back, when they spent a day or two in their world but come back to the human world, they'll find that 200 years have passed, but it felt like they were only there in their world for a few minutes, few hours, a day. But upon returning back to their normal human world, they'll find that 300, 400 years passed by and the life they known is long gone. So that's just a funny little mythology to really paint the picture of how minerals work in the bloodstream. And upon if you're interested in a private consultation, I go further into that about the world of minerals and how their effect upon time. So in our human life, quartz, the mineral called quartz, is used in clockmaking, and that's another story. Please leave a comment, and I'd like to interact with individuals about this subject matter. Thank you.